I'm Pastor Eldred McClean, and this is my wife Lauren.
And we've been married for 46 plus years. It'll be 47 in September. We have two wonderful children and two smart and beautiful grandkids. Our daughter is Natasha, our son is Andre, and Matthew is our grandson and our granddaughter, Hallie. We met, believe it or not, through Pastor McClean seeing a picture of me when I was on a trip with a class in high school, and I think he fell in love with the picture.
Well, I can't be totally transparent, but there were some things on the picture that I liked, and I wanted to investigate a little more. But we were not close to each other. As a matter of fact, shortly after then, Lauren went off to college, and she was in upstate New York, and I was in St. Thomas. But I kept pursuing her, and after a while, I guess she'll tell you I was trolling her, but I caught up with her, and eventually we got married, and 46 years ago.
And that was the days before cell phones, Instagram, Facebook, and all those social media. So there were telephone calls, and so most of our relationship was long distance.
Yeah.
Until we met up after I was through with college. And the rest is history.
Yeah. So believe it or not, she was 14 years old when I saw that picture, and like I said, she went off to college, and after college, we connected again, and we were married.
Well, first of all, I would say that I was 14 years old when I truly accepted the Lord. I had been in church all my life, even working in the church, helping with the smaller kids in Sunday school and different things like that. But I accepted the Lord at age 14, and I was serious about my relationship. I knew one day I wanted to get married, but I wasn't from a household that there was marriage involved, so I wanted to be sure that I follow God's plan and get married. And so there were times when I was unsure about Pastor McClean here, but he pursued me, and he was convinced that the Lord had told him I was going to be his wife, and he waited. He actually waited for me.
So Lauren said she was 14 when she was saved. I was somewhere around 16 when I was saved, and had a lot of challenges. At age 19, I was drafted in the armed forces and ended up in Vietnam and all of that. So life itself helped me to mature. As far as challenges that we faced, shortly after we were married, we had family members, teenagers, right? Yes. That came to live with us, and that was a great test. And then shortly after that, I ended up in seminary, and then we started the church after that, and so there were always challenges that we had to overcome, but God's grace was sufficient. And as I mentioned challenges that we had to overcome, in addition to seminary and working at the church and our regular jobs, we didn't have a lot of time, but we found time. When our children were younger, we did quite a bit of traveling, mostly in a little minivan. We went up to Niagara Falls, went out to California, went up to San Antonio. So
by the way, which I will never drive to California again, ever. Yeah. It's too far.
Yeah. I'll tell you a story on that. We decided we were going to drive to California. I said, "Are you sure you want to do that?" She said, "Yeah, I'll help you drive." And we got south of Fort Worth, and she said, "I'm tired."
And I was.
So I said, "I tell you what, let's pull over and I will drive." And so we did. And after that, I knew I wasn't going to drive that distance any longer. And so that's the way that one went. Yeah. So we've always been involved. And that's another thing I didn't say. We've always been involved in the church, even before we were married. As a matter of fact, Lauren, when I finally caught up with her, it was at a Bible study, a young people's Bible study, and we attended different churches. I worked with young people at another church, and then when shortly after North Dallas was started, we became involved in various ministries at the church.
Yes, I was at the beginning. I taught Sunday school. I was uh, teaching fifth graders. Most of them are now married with kids of their own. And all that time I was still working as a nurse. I am a registered nurse and I work mostly with babies. So kids have always been a part of my heart that I minister to children. And working at the hospital, I found opportunities there as well to minister to my coworkers. Basically, Presbyterian is where I worked. It's a faith-based hospital, so we weren't penalized for any of that. But as long as our work was done, and so God has provided in that way for me to minister to people. And then for us as a couple, we have this like a class that we do for years, and I kind of, work as his helper and keep him on track now.
Yeah.
So that's what those are some of the things we've done.
Yeah, Sunday school was a part of of my life. As far back as I can remember, I taught a Sunday school class, and so several years ago we started one at North Dallas, and so every Sunday morning at 7 or 8 o'clock we've had a class, and that started, like I said, many years ago, and is still going on. Early in the history of NDCBF, I felt the need to care for people in a holistic way, and God made a way for me to start the counseling center.
And I am not a professional counselor, but I did take all counseling courses when I worked on my master's degree, and so they have been very helpful. I do work in the inquiry ministry at church, and it gives you an opportunity to not just evaluate people, emotionally and all that, but it does give you an opportunity to minister to them with prayer and with follow-ups, and helping them to pray through and work through some of their difficulties, and that's very rewarding for me.
So you asked us earlier, how has lives influenced others? I think just by coming alongside of individuals, and there's a verse in 1 Corinthians that the God of all comfort, 2 Corinthians, God of all comfort has comforted us in our distress, that we might comfort others who are in distress. And that's been one of the verses that has been a guiding factor for me. Another one is a common one: trust in God with all your heart, lean not to your own understanding, in all your ways acknowledge Him, and He'll direct your path. So the Word of God has kept me grounded, and I did not treat Lauren bad because I knew what the Word of God said. I mean, I didn't have any inclination to do it. I don't think she let me. She probably knocked me out if I tried to do that. But I had, God, and God has kept us. He's helped us, and
Yeah. I wouldn't. No one has had a perfect marriage, but there's been more good times than bad times, and I know we've been there for support for each other. Even when my mom was, she lived with us for a long time. She was a great lady. She did not interfere with anything that we may have had going on, which, she was just there, and he supported me a lot. We've been there for each other in times of need, in times of, helping others when, you needed support. And so we've tried to do that, of course, not on our own strength, but with God helping, leading and guiding, actually, not helping, because He is the ultimate helper. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I mentioned the time at seminary and how busy I was and all of that. I don't think I would have made it through if it hadn't been for Lauren. I remember I would work all day at Texas Instruments at the time, and then I'd go after work hours down to seminary. I would take notes, scribble notes, then I would come back and give them to Lauren, and she wrote these elaborate papers. I got all kinds of comments, and I laughed to myself because I knew that Lauren was, she majored in.
I just liked English. I didn't major in it.
All right, but she was real good. She was my spell checker before there was spell check on the computer. That tells you how much I appreciate her and how she's helped. But God has been sufficient in our lives, and I think we can be a blessing to others because He has blessed us, and so yeah.
Well, we went into marriage. I don't think it was the days before premarital counseling was available. So basically, we determined in our hearts that there would be no divorce. And Pastor McClean made that very clear. And there were times when I was kind of ready to phase out, but he was like, we have to trust God. We've got to put God in front of us and follow Him. And we've got to do. It's not an option. It was just not an option for us to even to think about it. So we had to work through. And prayer is always, it sounds cliche-ish, but prayer really works. And when you put it into God's hands and you take it back once, but you put it back into His hands, and leave it there, it makes a big difference.
Yeah, there's a verse in Revelation, I think it was Jesus was speaking to the church in Philadelphia, and He said, because you've kept my word, I will keep you in the time of trials. And I can genuinely say that God has kept us. God has kept us. We would have gone astray had it not been for the powerful Lord and the grace of God that kept us on course.
Yeah, Yolanda Adams sang the song In the Midst of It All. And we always like to listen to that because we realize that she was probably singing to us.
Absolutely.